Welcome back, Jabbers. Today we are talking about something you never knew you needed to hear about until today. We're talking about how to navigate the education noise and be conference confident. If you're like Kari and I, you've been to conferences, got super pumped and motivated, and then went home and basically didn't take any action, right? So that's changing today with our special guests, Renee Dalo and Amber Anderson from Conference Confident.
It's a mouthful. Tongue twister. Hi. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. Well, Renee, I'll introduce you. So Renee Dalo is the founder of Moxie Bright Events and host of Talk with Renee Dalo. She's a dynamic entrepreneur with 13 years of industry experience. As a certified coactive life and business coach, she inspires and educates event professionals, helping them build self-confidence, attract luxury clients, and grow their businesses. Renee is a sought-after speaker, having been the keynote at Wedding MBA 2023 and is set to return in 2024 for her 7th year. That's incredible. She has also keynoted NACE Evolve and regularly educates at the special event, Alt Summit, B-Sage, and other conferences. Recognized by Honeybook's 20 on the Rise and BizBash's most influential event pros, Renee is set to release her first book, The Coordination Cure, in 2024.
Heard it here first, people.
We are hearing it first because I've never heard about this. So Renee, we'll probably have to talk about this later.
That's the first time I've heard the title. I've known about this book for years. I'm excited to know the title now.
Oh my God, amazing. Well, hold on. Let me tell you about Amber. After a decade in weddings and events, Amber Anderson, former owner of Heavenly Day Events in Austin, Texas, transitioned into coaching others through Refine for Wedding Planners. Hosting the largest Facebook group exclusively for wedding planners, Refine offers courses, templates, a podcast, and more. Amber is widely published in Brides, Martha, Pop Sugar, and more, and speaks at conferences like TSE, CaterSource, DWHSA conference, as well as various organizations across the country, and has been voted a top 10 speaker for Wedding MBA. She's known for having radical honesty. We love that. Often saying what most people are thinking but won't say, and striving to elevate the industry one conversation at a time. And these ladies, you guys, were in for a treat because it's going to be honest and real, and there will be swear words.
Yes.
We can promise that. 100%.
After reading these bios, I'm like, I need to beef mine up a little bit more. Very impressive. So, ladies, let's dive in. How the heck did Conference Confident come about? Because I have a feeling you probably went through something we've all been through while attending a conference, which maybe allowed you to dream this up and bring this to life as a business. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Amber, do you want to take it or do you want me to do it?
Go for it. Go for it.
So Amber and I started talking about like what we would call like the problem with conferences. I'm making air quotes, like back in like 2017, right? Like we identified this as a problem way back. Because Amber runs Refine for Wedding Planners, the Facebook group, we hear a lot of what people are thinking. And so every year someone posts, what conferences are you all going to, right? And underneath there's a variety of answers. And this was back in 2017. Someone said basically like, well, I don't go to any of these because every time I go, I get no value out of them. And I thought, how is that possible? How can you be going to all of these by her own admission and not getting anything out of them? I have been to probably 100 conferences, even the worst ones, I get something out of them. So offline, Amber and I have always, since she took over Refine, have become better and better friends. And we started talking about it like, do you feel that way? No, I don't feel that way. I'll let you pick it up from here, Amber.
Yeah, and I think I kind of had a natural knack for how I attended conferences. I just had a natural sense of organization for them and came home with a sense of, setting aside time to get, to take action on the things that I learned. And it just kind of felt, again, natural to me. And I observed that others felt overwhelmed by what felt a little more easy for me. And so I thought, well, maybe I should teach why, like there's something to teach here. If it feels comfortable and normal and natural to me, then how can I help that feel a little more organic to others? And so Renee and I also too, to step back a second, Renee and I have done a joint party at Wedding MBA for years and years and years. And so it kind of grew from that. We decided, okay, well, part of that was to help people network going into the conference. And we're like, well, there's more here. Let's make this big conference feel smaller, help people understand how to take notes properly, how to listen to the sessions properly, how to research speakers ahead of time, and walk away with an action plan that's doable.
We had really wanted to sort of launch before it even had a name, right? Back in like 2018, 2019, we were like, is there a way we could do this? Because we were hosting this party and we would always co-host. We've had various co-hosts over the years. Aisle Planner was a co-host 2 years in a row. And we kept saying like, there's something here. People want to gather on this first night. They want, like Amber said, to make this feel smaller. And then we really just had the opportunity during the pandemic to really sit down, because we had time, and say, if we were going to teach how to conference, what would we teach? Right. And Amber's so good at distilling down information received into actionable things. And I, as a human person, am so good at like knowing what I want out of something before I walk in the room, so that I am not drinking from a fire hose. I am like, there was one year I went to Alt Summit in Palm Springs.
I was there.
This was like
the same
it was
year.
2020. It was right before lockdown, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was with my friend Leah, and I beforehand just organically were like, hey, what are you here for? I was like, well, I'm here to learn how to self-publish a book. Full circle. Guess what I'm doing this year? And all I did was go to the publishing and book writing talks. I didn't go to anything else. I was like, this is what I'm here for. It didn't occur to me that other people didn't do it that way. Right. And so this is organically how we sort of came to this.
That's what I did in 2019, I think, or 2018 at Wedding MBA. I only went to SEO sessions, whether it was photography or DJ. I didn't care who was the speaker or who it was focused on. I went only to SEO sessions.
That's fascinating and so brilliant that you thought of this early on, because I think naturally we think, oh my God, I would need to learn about social media, publishing a book, SEO, because I'm paying money to go. I have to get the most, quote unquote, out of it, right? By it doing the most. But I think what you guys are saying, and we're going to talk about this in a bit, is like having a goal in mind, having a path, because there will be a gazillion conferences every year. So really hone in on something that you want to learn at that one. And I think that's brilliant. And I would put it out there that probably majority do not do that.
I agree.
I've never met anyone that does.
Except Amber and I.
I mean,
which is probably why people leave saying to themselves, well, I didn't get anything out of it, because they feel so overwhelmed by information and inundated with everything they learned.
They spread themselves too thin across topics.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great learning lesson for me too, because now I'm like, oh, I'm going to think about that going into more conferences. But what would you tell entrepreneurs who are on the fence about spending money to attend a conference, whether it's in person or online? And kind of with that of like knowing which ones are good, which ones are not, and like full of fluff, right? Kind of deciphering like, this one is going to be beneficial for me.
I have opinions about that based off of, piggyback off of the comment on in Refine. It's talked about like, which one should I go to? And I get, people will say, not this one because of this, or this has fluff, or whatever. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like, this one's reputation for being for newbies. I'm like, what? I've been doing this for 15 years and I still learn amazing things, or I look at it in a very different way. I don't go for this reason, I go for that reason. And people don't think outside that box. And so I tend to think that one of the better ways to approach this is to really narrow down, again, what you're looking for, what you need, and ask around. And sure, ask in the Refine group, ask in other places, but when you're asking, be mindful of the voices that are answering. Are they jaded? Are they the type that actually do pay attention? Are they the kind that put in the work? Or are they the kind that, are they humble? Are they teachable? Are they people that are going to really give good feedback? And so making sure that the voices you're listening to align with how you work and how you receive education. And I think checking out the speakers in advance is big, downloading their freebies, seeing if they've been a guest on a podcast, if they have their own podcast, and kind of hearing their voices, making sure that's a learning style that, works for you. Is it a topic that you're going to the conference? Don't fly across the country for a topic that they have a podcast on. Listen to it at home. So do that kind of research. And I again, I agree. I've been to so many different conferences, and the worst one, Renee and I were at together. I
Oh
still
yeah,
walk.
I forgot about
Oh
that
my
one.
gosh, it was so bad.
It was
Tell
It
us.
was so bad. But in that, over the last however long since that point, like Renee and I, there's things that we've talked about and ideas that we get because we've had that experience.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so maybe I didn't walk away with a notebook full of things and action items, but there was some gold that came out of that experience in a whole different way.
Yeah, I will say, because you mentioned like online versus in person, I love them both, but I think it's apples and oranges, right? We cannot compare. I think a virtual experience is what you make of it at home. Some people have the resource to make it a little getaway, and some don't. And no, it's no shade. I've been a student in virtual, like retreats where I have to kind of sequester myself all weekend, and I have felt great about them. I've also done the week-long summits where I'm struggling to fit the education into my workload. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I love an in-person conference. You can't get me on a plane, get me in the resort, get me, you know what I mean? Get me talking to people by the fire at night. Like, I want that experience. I want the community. I want the connection. I am tired, frankly, of sitting at this desk by myself. So sometimes, like, the fluffiest conference I've ever been to, and I don't want to say the name, they're not in business, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. It was a million years ago. It was up in wine country. It was like 2016. And it was touted as like a luxury experience, and it was, but a lot of it felt like what I imagined being in a sorority felt like. And that's just not my vibe, right? So, but I got so much out of it. Marcy Blum spoke. Like, I learned things that week that I have used my entire career. Would I return to that experience? No. Was it worth the money I paid? Yeah, because all these years later, it's still with me in some level.
You get out of something what you put into it. So when you get there,
100%.
if it's meeting your expectations, great. If it's not, make it.
And Amber and I just went to Mexico to be at the Be Sage conference. Now, Amber was a sponsor and I was an attendee. And being in business all these years, people are like, "Oh, you're going as an attendee?" I'm like, "Sure am," because I'm going to learn something. And I did learn a lot, but also it was about being in community with those people, meeting new people, being in Mexico. Sometimes you just need a moment at the pool with your laptop. You know what I mean? So there's many reasons to attend a conference. I think we cannot compare virtual and in person, but I've never regretted doing it in person. Even that one that Amber mentioned that was really dreadful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And no, I think you're right in saying apples to oranges for conferences. There are different price points, of course, with attending in person. And, if you are listening and you're part of the wedding community, you know about Engage, and it's a multi-$1,000, attendance. And I've personally, and I've never been. And so I guess I, take this with a grain of salt, but my impression, I always think it's just not my people. But that being said, I've heard people say the education was great. Some people are like, the parties were epic and they got inspired with the design. And so I think, to your point, yeah, you get out what you put in. And so if you're going, you're like, I've already know all this. And then don't focus on the education, go and mingle and make genuine connections.
I want to just speak to what you just said about I already know all this. This is something I say almost every single time I step on stage. So anyone who's listening, who's seen me at Wedding MBA or anywhere, has heard me say this, but I don't care if you know everything already. Honestly, right? I care about what you've done. Like, what have you actually done? Like, you could sit there and be like, I know about social media. Okay, what are you posting? I know about blogs. Okay, are you blogging though? Like, come back to me after you've done it, after you have data, after we can assess it. Just knowing something, I understand the impulse to be in the audience and be like, I'm an expert. I already know everything. Trust me, I know how that feels. But it's really damaging to the whole experience. to just sit there and be like, I already know you can't teach me anything. Like, then why are you there? Why attend? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes back to your point where you said people asked you why you were attending because you have already been and, just kind of like where you are in your career. But I think that's like a humbling thing, right? You're like, I have something to learn still, even though I could be a speaker at this conference.
Listen, I was a speaker at BCH the year before, right? And then the next year I was like, I want to go back because I love the community. I wanted to go to Mexico. And also like Amber was going to be there. My friends were going to be there. But also I always learn something. And I'll say this, I'm a different person every day, right? So like me in 2016, learning what I learned up in Napa, different now in 2024. Like we're always hopefully evolving. So what we need to learn evolves too.
Yeah.
Fair.
We can hear, I did that SEO track forever ago. I could do an SEO course today and learn something totally new. And maybe that's a bad example because technology changes, but take a non-tech topic and that applies, like you just hear things different on different days. And like Renee said, I think when you're in person, there's this mindset shift that happens where you just focus in a different way. And Renee and I have these side projects, or we have an LLC together. We're direct competitors and also have a joint venture. And we get so much done. We always add a day to these conferences and then work together. And so find your people outside of, go to these conferences, find your people, and then y'all those of you who are listening, add a day and then work together, co-work and see what comes out of that. It's pretty incredible.
That's what we did in Mexico. And then that's basically the template for Conference Confident. It's a day that we tack on to Wedding a BA at the end, where we take our cohort, which is usually around 15 people, and we say like, and we've done a bunch of pre-work with them, which we can talk about. But when we get them in the room that day, we're like, okay, get to work. Like, we're not here to talk about like concepts necessarily, but we're like, get out your calendar. Like last year, we made someone raise their prices in the room.
On our website in the moment.
Because she was like, I've been wanting to do it for like 6 months. I was like, get out your fucking laptop. What are we doing? What are we doing?
I love that.
You have the quality and the knowledge, the expertise to back it. Do it.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's, I think, going perfectly into my next question, but it's going to be a lot about action taking and such. But I also want to side note and say the Be Sage conference, I had some friends here from Nashville, the girls from Modern Vintage events, the Becky and Jessa. Oh my God, Becky and Jessa. Becca and Jesse. Wow. But I think they either stayed later or got there early and they did a styled shoot. And
a lot of people did.
Yes, that's genius. That's absolutely genius. I mean, if you are looking to do, and this podcast is geared towards all sorts of small businesses, but we of course talk about weddings because it's what we know. But if you are traveling for something like this and it's a big ticket price for you to go out there, but you're wanting to do destination work, take advantage, like plan something, like you said, start earlier or stay later, get together, do a creative project. But I thought that was brilliant.
That's a great idea. Yeah. And the mastermind day that we did at BSage was just with our peers, small group, 5 of us.
Yeah, 5.
We made some major moves that day. Like, we can't tell you what was said, obviously, because it's confidential, but like big moves have come out of that day where we left and we were like, oh, okay, we all got work to do. But like, that's the beauty of a conference.
There were tears. There were big moves. Yeah. There were, some 180s for people.
No, that's important. Okay. So let's say someone is getting ready to go to a conference. They're listening to this podcast and maybe it's their first one, or maybe it's like they are the type of person that is feeling every time they go, they're overwhelmed or they don't get anything out of it. How would you tell them to prepare for a conference?
There's so much. I think if we're talking about just any conference generally, right?
Let's go with in person first of all, and any conference.
I would say, especially if they're traveling solo, right? Find ways to engage beforehand. So like, is there a Facebook group? Is there an online community? I mean, back in the day in 2015, I went to Mighty conference. It was like a blogging conference in Palm Springs. I didn't know a single person, but I went on Twitter and I just hashtagged Mighty conference, and then other people came up and I was like, hey, I'm going too. And I just made friends before I went. So like anything you can do that's like that now, you could probably do it much easier now. And just try to find something so that you're not walking into a super cold, empty room. But like Amber said, I always research the speakers. Most professional speakers have websites, podcasts, blog posts you can read, or they've been guests on other podcasts. And so I kind of like knowing the speakers, especially if it's a kind of conference where you're sort of choosing your own adventure, like Wedding MBA or like TSE or Cater Source, where there's so much. Yeah, I dig into the topics, but also the speakers, because if I like the topic, but I don't really engage well with the speaker, then I just know that my time is going to be spent somewhere else. Yeah.
And would you say typically conferences will release their program ahead of time, so you have time to go through circle sessions and know kind of what you're getting yourself into ahead of time?
I think so for the most part. And I think too, don't hesitate to reach out to those speakers. Go into their websites, and if you have a question about their topic and you want clarity on, this is what I'm hoping to learn from this is what my business, this is where I am in my business, this is what I think I need. Will this be a good session for me? Is this a good fit? They'll be happy to tell you. And, I think it's important to engage with those speakers in advance so that you can introduce yourself while you're there. You never know what doors will open from that. I've had some really cool doors open just by saying hello to a speaker. So, that can and at times feel intimidating, but speakers love that. And don't be afraid of that. So that, start engaging with them ahead of time on social media or wherever they are hanging out. And then, yeah, go say hello. But I think, step back a bit, reflecting on what your business needs before you go is so important. Like Renee said, she walks in and she knows this is where I'm going to focus. And I think a good resource for helping identify what some of those things might be is the book by Gino Wickman, Traction. He really breaks down quarterly and annual goals in a way that are bite-sized by the week and allow someone to attend a conference with their actual goals in mind. And I think goal setting can really overwhelm people. And the idea of breaking it down into bite-sized bits makes that a little bit more realistic and allows you to listen to a speaker with the right lens as opposed to just information by fire hose. You're like listening for the right thing.
Yeah.
I love that advice coming from you guys who have been speakers, because I think as like someone who attends, you're like, oh, I can't reach out to the speakers. You kind of feel this intimidation of like, they're on this platform, they don't have time to respond to me. But I feel like that's such a good like hurdle to get over, because most people probably aren't reaching out. So it's not like you're inundated with all of these requests from attendees. So you probably stand out more, right?
For Oprah,
I remember the ones
like my arms are open. You know,
you're giving gifts to everyone.
I'd rather someone ask me, "Is this presentation for me? I'm looking for XYZ," and me be like, this one is actually probably a little too basic or advanced, or I didn't think about including that, but I could. Because that's the other thing too. Like, if you don't think I'm adding something the night before, like if someone asks me a thing that fits, I'm going to add it. I'm going to add it because I'm like, oh, I never even thought about that. They gave me a gift.
Mm-hmm. Please reach out. I mean, we are humans. We put our pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. And we love that interaction and engagement. It's encouraging to us. It helps us know that we're on the right track and that we, are helping people. We're doing it because we enjoy helping others. And that feedback, that introducing yourself to us is a form of feedback. It's a form of affirmation that we're on the right track. And so that's helpful and encouraging to us too.
Yeah, perfect. So as like someone attending a conference, let's say you kind of have an idea of what you want to learn, but are there other things that you would say are like things that you should do for sure, but then also things that are like big no-nos to stay away from, whether it's maybe like interacting with the speakers or other people at the conference? What are sort of some like basic tips that you would give attendees?
I mean, I'm always going to say wellness, like take care of your wellness. You know what I mean? Especially if we're talking about Las Vegas, like you guys need to eat and sleep and drink so much freaking water that you've never, more water than you've ever thought before. Like you're not a different person because you're away, right? You have to still take care of yourself. but on that note, I would say, please put your out of office on, like, let your clients know that you are engaged in self-development. And like, unless something is literally on fire, they're going to hear from you when you get home.
Yeah.
And
I think that's so important. Most of the convention centers, a lot of the convention centers are in extreme temperature or extreme weather type locations. And so knowing that in advance and where you're going and how your body's going to have to adjust to that is important. Orlando, Los Angeles is nice and pretty and neutral, but
Yeah.
you know, Las Vegas and Orlando, I mean, see, they're super humid, they're like dry, and you know, that's a hard adjustment. So wellness is really big. I think walking into it without ego is huge. Like the whole being teachable and humble and knowing that you may sit through a 45-minute session and only 5 minutes fed you, but that 5 minutes might change your business. So just be patient with it. I think another no-no in the same vein is if a speaker is not resonating, if it's dry and it's just like, oh, I can't even keep my eyes open, or just not where you expected at all, going totally different direction, don't stay. Go to another session. Like get up and leave and take, own your own experience. Own your own experience and take, like, honor your investment and go where you need to go. Don't feel like
that's terrifying to think of getting up in the middle and leaving a session.
Yeah.
it is what it is. I always sit in a seat where I can't do that.
Perfect. That's a great tip, in an exit row.
I will say, as someone who's been on the biggest stage at Wedding MBA, do I notice when people leave? Yeah. Do I take it personally? No.
People are coming and going.
Yeah, it's like maybe they had to go to the bathroom. Maybe they didn't like what I was saying. Okay. I want people to have a good experience. If it's not going to be with me and it's going to be in the hallway eating a pretzel, more power to you, friend. You know what I mean? Like, I don't ever take it personally. So if you're listening and you're like, I would never get up, you're fine. It's fine. We're fine.
That's also something that a speaker that's part of being a speaker. If a speaker can't handle that, that's not your problem.
100%. And sometimes we know we're saying things that are a little gunner buff. I mean, I did a whole presentation at Wedding MBA a couple of years ago based on first impressions. And I was up there saying some shit that people did not like. And there was someone who got up and left. And I remember watching her get up and leave. And I remember thinking, that's going to be a bad review. And what it was, when I got the reviews back, is that and I know exactly who it was. She said, this presentation was something I desperately needed. And I was so triggered by what she was saying, because I was talking a lot about like style and like presenting yourself properly. And I think I said something about like, if your shoes are broken and you're threadbare, like clients notice that. And she wrote, because I was sitting there in shoes that were broken, I just needed to leave the room. And she's like, but since then I've put money aside, I've changed my wardrobe. She's like, this changed my life, but I had to leave. So I think about that a lot when someone gets up and like, sometimes we can't know how we're affecting someone, and it doesn't matter as long as they were receptive or open or got something from it.
It was more like an embarrassment for her that she was just like, oh, I'm triggered by this and I need to.
Yeah. And I wish they gave me her email address, because I wanted to write and be like, are you good, girl? Are we okay?
Yeah.
But it's all anonymous, so we don't know. Yeah.
And Amber, you said something great about putting your ego aside. And I think about that, which again, is going to lead perfectly into my next question. So thank you for that. But I think about it with clicks, right? We think of conferences, and we just interviewed Kevin Dennis about networking. And this is very similar in the sense that you are entering a massive networking event, but with also some content, some education content. But I guess, my question kind of is for introverts or for people who are afraid that there's going to be clicks and they're going by themselves. Okay, great. So Amber is a self-proclaimed introvert, and no, not Renee. We already know Renee's not. So this is great. How, would you each, and let's maybe also add in as an extrovert, because sometimes the extroverted energy can be too much at a conference. So tell me, in your own personalities, how would you recommend an introvert and an extrovert attend a conference in a way that makes them comfortable?
Well, I think I'm a introvert with extroverted qualities. So I think hearing I'm an introvert sometimes surprises people, but I'm definitely an introvert, and I need a lot of downtime to recover. So conferences can be a lot for me. I need to go to my room I need to be in my room each night. But that's not possible. I think another thing too is to make sure you're aware of all the ancillary events that are taking place and schedule for them. So especially as an introvert, to have time to prepare your mind for, okay, I've got all these events. And try to meet people in advance starting to go, make your online friends and connect with them and say, hey, let's, stay in the same hotel and we can walk over together, or I'll save you a seat in this session. Let's compare our schedules ahead of time. Which sessions are you going to? Okay, great. I'll meet you for lunch, and that sort of thing, just to kind of feel like you have a connection at some point. But also to just, wow, maybe unpopular opinion, like, you don't have to network. Just go and be a fly on the wall if you want. If that is going to serve your business and you're going to grow in some sort of way doing that, then that's okay too. I encourage you to get outside of your shell. I think that you will experience more opportunity by doing that and getting uncomfortable. I really think you should try, but at an absolute minimum, don't go if you feel like you have to network and you won't do it. Like, just at least go. But yeah, trying to meet people. And then that's the whole point. That's the whole reason we started Conference Confident, is so we can have an immediate, these are your 15 people. This is where you're going to eat for lunch on Tuesday. This is where you're going to eat for lunch on Wednesday. This is where we're doing dinner. And it's not mandatory, but it's just, yeah. And we watch for clicks even within that. And
Yeah.
we break that up. There, anyone listening that goes to Conference Confident wouldn't even know we do this, but there are little things that we do behind the scenes that kind of break those things up.
Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, I was going to ask, do you recommend that people go with like friends that they know, or to go alone? Because I feel like earlier in my business, if I went to a conference, I'm like, oh, I need a friend, because it's almost like a crutch, right? Of like relying on them. You're kind of like, what sessions are you going to? But now knowing that I should have more of a goal in mind, it's like, should I go with a friend and have that as a backup, or just try to go on your own?
I've done both. I've done the solo trip and it's been great. I'm an only child, so like I do love my alone time despite my extroversion. And I've done it with friends. I think the thing to manage when you're with someone that you're very close to, especially like a business bestie or something, is like you actually might have different goals for this conference, and so sticking to each other like glue won't help. But having the safety net of like someone to room with that is really nice. So I think I can see both sides of it. I think there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, definitely don't marry yourself to the sessions that they want to go to just to stay together.
Yeah, divide and conquer is a better tactic in that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I feel sometimes this need, and maybe this is like the hospitality side of us, but this need to make sure that person's okay all the time. And it brings me anxiety if they're there with me all the time. And I would focus more if I knew I could listen to a session, not wondering why my friend is on her phone and not paying attention, right? Like, it's such a weird feeling. So yeah, I like the idea of, like, I think the rooming part is a great idea, but I think it is probably good to have some sessions solo and some sessions maybe with a friend if you want to start that way, but not to be afraid to break it up. And I'm assuming there's like so many people at these conferences that like nobody knows if you're by yourself. They don't care. They like,
Who cares?
right? They're so focused on them because everybody's a little bit nervous that they don't care what you're doing.
It's really true. Even at B Sage, which is relatively small, it's like 100, 125 people. That's still 125 people. I don't know who knows each other from before. And most everyone's just there to meet new people too. So everyone kind of has the same goal of like being a little more outward. To answer your extroversion question from before, just in case I'm an extrovert to listening, and they're like, we have no notes. I have some notes. Number one, I think extroverts in general need to be really self-aware of how they are taking up space and energy in a room or in a conversation. And I think that's something that I've spent so much of my life trying to cultivate, like knowing when I'm being too much, right? And just being like, you need to shut up right now, Renee. Like, nobody needs this energy right now, put it away. But then also I think that extroverts have a really interesting role to play in a conference sometimes, in that I have no problem crossing a room to someone who's sitting alone and saying, come sit with us. Right. I've done it. I do it at every single conference I've ever been to. Right. I will cross a room and be like, I'm not afraid to talk to you, and you should come sit with my friends because we're nice people and I don't want you to be alone. Now, if someone says to me, I'd rather be alone. Great. Sorry. So, listen, I'm not here to bully anybody, but I also know that if someone's sitting alone and it's not by choice, that feels bad. And so it's no skin off my nose to cross a room and say, hey, do you want to come sit with us? And every extrovert listening needs to do more of that, be more of a connector, because that's how we create community.
Yeah, I love that. So since you guys have attended a lot of conferences, would you say that there's such a thing as like too much education? I mean, someone who attends and maybe like doesn't take action, or, you know, they're kind of thinking, I need to go to all these conferences. Maybe they're at the start of their business. Like, what in your mind is there a thing as too much education? And does it really just matter if you're taking action on those conferences or not?
I know Amber and I disagree on this. So Amber, you go
I'm
first.
gonna have opposite
Ooh, I like
answers, but
this.
but I think we're gonna come full circle in good ways. Go for it,
Yes.
Renee.
I think there is such a thing as too much education. I think education without action makes us feel like we're doing something in our business when we're not actually doing anything at all. And I think especially female entrepreneurs, they do this thing that if it's in the book called Playing Big by Tara Moore, it's called This Before That. So like if the that is like, well, I need to redo my website. So the this is like, well, before I do that, I need to research SEO and get the best photos, and I need to get the best copy, and I need to procrastinate on it for 3 or 4 years before I redo my website because I couldn't possibly do this before that. That's a bunch of BS, right? And I think sometimes when we're taking in a lot of education but not doing anything, we have this false sense of productivity. So I think that there is too much. I also think there's education at the wrong time. So like if I were in year 1 and going to engage, no, not right. You're not ready for that yet, right? There is like something to be said about like sort of meeting yourself where you are. And so that's my take on it. But I think Amber probably has a different, maybe slightly.
And I actually agree with everything Renee just said, but I also in a flip side sort of way can also say no, there's never too much education. I think that it's about narrowing it down and what's right for you. And back to the humility point. So in some ways we're probably saying the same thing just in different ways. The humility point, right? There's so many times that I'll hear someone say, that was a waste of my time, or that didn't move my needle or whatnot. It's like, well, but it helps someone else tremendously. I'll get off the stage, I'll get my surveys, and half the people loved it and half the people didn't. And so those that didn't kind of walk away like, and it's like, no, you don't get to walk away with that attitude, knowing that you need to know that that really helps someone else. So no, I don't think there's ever too much education. I just think it's about, again, finding the right fit and the right time, leaning in on to things that make sense for where you are when you're there, and not overwhelming yourself. I think that summits are amazing. Summits that have just week long, just action packed 30-minute power sessions and whatnot, those are amazing. And I think that the approach to those should be, let's get in there, here's some stuff, and then from there decide where I need to narrow down on. Don't walk into a summit and think you have to do all of those things. That's not possible. That's not realistic. That's not business savvy. There's nothing smart about that. It's a matter of getting enough knowledge to know where you need to focus. So a little bit of a, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that's really helpful just in general, I think, with social media and everything now too, right? Like we feel inundated, or at least I feel inundated with courses and education from everybody. And it is really like cutting out the noise of what do I need and what I don't need in my business, and just like ignoring
And what you have
the
time
education
for.
that I'm like, I don't need that right now, you know?
Well, that's the thing is there too much education? No. Is there too much in your face about it? Yes.
And do you have enough time for it? Like, are you going to make time for it? Because we don't ever have time. We have to make it. And if you don't really want to learn it, you're not going to make the time.
Right.
Yeah. And I think both brought up great points. I think if you sit on it, don't take action, it can be too much. However, you could also sign up for 10 of them and have a very specific small goal at each of them. So you're not expected to learn all the things at every single one. But if, conference number 1, it's about meeting 3 people that are in your new industry. Great. You achieve that. Move on to the next one where it is more about education, where you want to learn something specific about SEO. So I think, to your point, both of you correct answers, like I think you know what you need. And I think that, the outcome is just making sure that there's some type of implementation or going in with a goal from the get-go.
Yeah. And I'll say this, because you mentioned Engage a while back, and I just want to put it out there. I don't know why I'm so desperate to say this in person, but I will. I didn't learn anything at Engage. I mean, I had a good time, and I met a tremendous amount of people. I made so many new friends, people I've worked with, the connections, the networking was amazing. But if I can't remember right now a single thing that I took away, and I went in 2019 for the first time. So the idea that Engage is some like, oh my God, that's the pinnacle, that's the one. Maybe it is for you, or maybe it's just a really nice vacation where you meet a lot of people. And the point is the networking. That's what it was for me. And I didn't know that going in. I expected my mind to be blown with new information. And for me, it just wasn't.
Yeah.
This is not to say I don't like it or didn't have a good time. I didn't think it was worth, I had a great time. It was worth every penny. It just, that wasn't the outcome for me, you know?
It is funny to me when this is going back to the refined question that people ask about which conferences. It's so funny to me when people are like, oh, this conference is like newbie stuff and not really, you know, it's kind of fluff and not really meaty. And this one is like where you're gonna really hit it. And it's like it's the same speakers teaching the same stuff, just at a different place. It's the same stuff. And so it's just how you go into it, and it's all about the experience that you're looking for. Are you looking for an in and out, easy location, Vegas, Orlando, cookie cutter conference, or it's just like, you know, perfect schedule, it's just made for you? Or are you looking for the extravagant experience where your brain can, you know, let loose and be inspired, and you know, you come away with something totally different from that kind of experience.
Yeah. And I imagine the price point probably has an effect on how serious you take it too, to some extent. Like if you're just paying $17 to go to an online summit, it's possible that that's going to sit in your inbox for a while and you're not going to address it. If you're paying $5,000 to attend a conference, you better have your eyes open and paying attention and meeting the right people to make it worth it. Do you think?
Absolutely.
I think it's part of the thing about what Amber was saying before about like, what are the auxiliary events? Like what are at Engage, everything is included, like all the parties or whatever, but it's something like Wedding MBA where we're in Vegas, many different organizations will host their own individual parties. And it's up to you to either get yourself invited, figure out how to go. Some people really thrive in that environment. And some people are like, I don't want to jump through hoops to go. No, thanks. But I do think that the overall experience of, again, we'll just say Wedding MBA because that's what's on the table here, is very different if you attend events at night and network and go out of your way than it is if you don't do that. Now, I still agree with Amber, protect your peace. As the extrovert in the group here, like I will run myself until I lose my voice. And then I'm like, I gotta take tonight off, friends. Like every year, right? Amber can say every year by Thursday, I'm out.
I say I want to go to my room. That's what I want to do. I still, you know, there was one, I get really frustrated hearing a lot of, I don't have time, it's during busy season or whatever. That to me is almost even offensive because my first conference that I ever went to, I had a 6-month-old. I was breastfeeding, so I had to pump the whole week that I was there, and I had 2 weddings. I had 8 weddings that month, one right before the conference, and I had to red eye home for the next one. And I went to every event. I answered every email while I was gone, and I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I don't subscribe to that philosophy as a whole. I have a whole course called Breaking Up with Busy. That's not my life philosophy. But sometimes you just have to buckle up and do hard shit, guys. Like, just do it. Who cares if it's hard? I'm sorry, it's hard. Like, you own a business, it's hard. You signed up for hard. So do it.
Totally.
I think that, there's never a good time.
Totally.
Never a perfect time.
And I kind of going back to your comment about Engage, Renee, I assume you probably recognized while you were at the conference that you weren't getting what you kind of came into with the expectation. And I think that feels like a key thing to keep in mind, right? Like being flexible while you're at the conference and you like switched gears and you're like, you know what? I'm meeting incredible people. I'm networking and not leaving there feeling really disappointed because your mind wasn't blown by new information.
Yeah. I love that you asked me that. Yes. So like there was a very specific point midweek, if I can have a tangent moment to tell you.
Yeah.
So like the way Engage is structured is like, it's like a lot of classroom stuff. And then everything is like planned for you, right? So there are lunch events, dinner events, And in like day 2, I think there was a lunch event that was a pool party. That was where they were serving us lunch. And I had been frustrated because like I said, I was kind of underwhelmed by the classroom experience. but I'm also a plus size woman. And the idea of going to a pool party to eat lunch didn't sit with me well. Like, I just thought, like, this is the most uncomfortable thing you could make me do. And I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to do this. And so I went back to my room. Leah Weinberg was my roommate. And so she was back in the room and we were both just like, we don't really want to do this. Like, are we gonna, the only way to get food is to go there. So the only way to get food was to go there. So I went to get food, determined to not stay, just determined to be like, how dare you, da, da, da. And I got my little taco plate. And as I was leaving, a very kind group of planners that I knew, you know, here and there were like, get in the pool. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, well, just sit with your feet in anyway. And I was like, okay, I'll be the plus size girl who won't get in the pool. Sure. But I was having a lot of like high school feelings. I'm going to be honest with you. Right. And I sat by the pool and ate my little tacos. And I realized, oh, this is what it's about. Like, this moment is actually what this conference is about. Like, I'm getting a deeper conversation with these people by just putting myself in the environment, no matter how uncomfortable I was in the moment. And sure enough, within like 20 minutes, I wasn't as uncomfortable. Did I like that they planned it that way? Still no. I'm going to still get on my pedestal and stay. No, they shouldn't have done it. But I was like, oh, get in the freaking pool, Renee, right? By the last day, my butt was in the pool and I was getting people to come on my podcast and I was talking about next time I was in New York, I'll stay at your apartment. And I was like making very good connections with people that I'd only ever known on the internet. And so that, Kari, is sort of where it turned for me, where I was like, I need to embrace what this actually is and not what I thought it was going to be. And I need to, like, quote unquote, get my ass in the pool.
Yeah.
That's which is the refinery treats. I do that. Sorry, good.
No, I was just gonna say, which is huge, right? Because like you could have been the person who stayed in their room and was like, fuck this week. Like, you know what I mean? And then not gotten any of those connections out of it.
Right.
We do what I call school at the pool, our refinery treats, because the social learning is so enriching. That's where so much comes to life, for sure. And just to kind of wrap up this piece of what we're talking about, I think too, certain industries, you know, there are conferences that are resume builders. So whether you get anything out of it or not, slap it on your resume. And in our industry, weddings engages that conference. So whether you get anything out of it or not, to say you're at Engage is a big deal. Yeah. And so that in and of itself goes a long way for some businesses.
Yeah, that's so true. That can be a goal in itself, like you said, that, you know, put on your resume.
I have a new motivation mantra where sometimes I just say to myself, get in the fucking pool. There's no
I love it. We're going to start using that. Okay. We're ready to almost wrap this up. I have one more kind of big question for you guys. So let's say the person attends the conference and they learned some stuff and now they're going home. And what do you think, what are some tips that you would give entrepreneurs, small businesses that just attended the conference to get the most bang for their buck? And maybe this is something that you both do with Conference Confident and your students and your team. What makes it that it doesn't just end the second they leave the conference room?
Well, I think first off, time is what throws people off, and how that's where they get lost in their investment. That's where their investment falls down the drain. So making sure ahead of time that you've blocked time for when you get home. And I think also that day after the conference. And so that's why Renee and I started Conference Confident, to have that day after. So before, again, like Renee said, we do some prep with our attendees, and then we're available to them during the week, and we have some structure around that. But then the day following the conference, we have them taking notes in a certain way. We've got a workbook for them, and we've taught them some very specific note-taking skills going into it, so that on our kind of workshop day, we can pull from those with strategy and put together a plan of action. So everyone walks away with their own individual plan of action, having gone through the same exercise. So, you know, have exercise and then individual work time, and then some co-working. And so they're either doing the work right then and there, or they're at least putting together the plan so that when they go home to the time that they've already blocked to do it, they know what they're doing on those CEO days. They've got that already on the calendar. And I think that's a thing that really throws people off, is having CEO days scheduled in the first place and then knowing what to do on them. So setting them up for success in that way. And then we also, you want to tell them about our follow-ups?
Yeah, so we also have a pretty robust like accountability piece to this at all. Like in the room, we sort of demand accountability, like to themselves, but also to each other, to the cohort. Our cohort from last year still meets monthly on Zoom without us. They have continued this group, and they really are. They're on Voxer still together. Like at a certain point, we bow out, but they have continued. But we also have in the curriculum of Conference Confident 4 follow-up calls. So January, February, March, April, where we're going on Zoom and saying, okay, you all want to talk about leadership. Let's talk about leadership. You all want to talk about marketing. Let's do a call on marketing. And so we're literally crowdsourcing the topics from what they're asking for, what they need. The leadership call was especially like, we want this. We were like, great, let's talk about it. But we're also keeping them accountable because we're keeping them connected and saying like, it doesn't just end in November. Like we do give them December off because we're kind people and there's holidays and we have lives. But like once January comes, we're like, okay, go back to your workbook, pick it out. What are we working on now? And then the other piece, because we do have that accountability, but in the room accountability is also something that I think is a little, I'm going to use the word magical. Everyone's going to laugh at me, but like that day is a little magical because we are sort of saying like, if you want to raise your prices, just do it right now. Do it now. Like what's the small, if there's something that's been hanging over your head for months, what's stopping you from doing it right now? Sometimes in order to get into big action, we need to take tiny action right now. And so when there's 14 other people looking at you like, yeah, go do it, you do it. And then you're like, oh, that wasn't so hard. And then you believe in yourself a little bit more for the next time you have to take action.
We're kind of breaking down that this before that wall. The whole concept Renee was talking about earlier, kind of breaking that down. Like, no, you don't have to do this before that. Just do that. Just do it.
What's the easiest way this can get done? Let's just do it. Right. Because I think you always learn more when you bring something to market, for lack of a better term, like when you launch something or make an offer or change something in your business. Like you're not really going to know how it's going to go unless you just do it and then receive feedback or no feedback. And maybe that's the feedback, but you're not going to learn anything just keeping something in theory. The whole thing about Conference Confident is we're taking the concepts and the things they've learned, we're taking it from theory into action.
Yeah. I think it's important too, as a conference attendee, to give yourself permission to take action right away. I think sometimes people think, oh, I got to take all my notes and I'll do it later. It's like, if it takes 5 minutes or less, just do it right then and there, or spend an hour at the end of the workday, at the end of the conference day in your hotel room, and just knock out what you can for an hour before you go to all the social stuff.
You like this, Gabby, because I think you were there that day. Remember the Wedding Wire world that came to LA like in 2016 or something? I think we were all there.
Okay, possibly.
Alan Burt was on stage talking about putting a chat bot on your website. This was like when it was new, right?
Yes.
You remember this? And
yes.
I was sitting there like a lunatic, and I did it while he was talking because I was like, if I wait, I'm going to forget or not do it. Or my AD, I'm going to like spiral into something else. And I was like, how hard could it be? It was not hard. I did it while he was talking. And then it was like brand new tech at the time. I was like, look how shiny. Sometimes you just need to force yourself to do things.
Yeah. And that's the people we need, because if you go solo or even if you go with a friend, it's just a notebook full of notes and no one's there to be like, I promise it's not that hard. Let's just do it together right now. Sit here for 5 minutes. Let's just do it. Change your price, put your chat bot, write a quick Instagram post, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like you said, chip away. Maybe the goal is bigger, but you can take a few actions that day, chip away, and then you have all these check-in calls, and those check-in calls are coming up. So you better have to have put some work in. And I think that is so, so valuable. And what's honestly just lacking in the education space, because a lot of people are putting out the content, but there's very little follow-up or follow through after that, unless you are hiring a coach or unless, something of the sort. So this sounds like it's way more approachable. A bigger group of people can participate, and you're there in the action. You're there before, you're in the action, and then you're there to support after.
Yeah. And specifically with Conference Confident, because it's tied to Wedding MBA, we do a lot of prep about the conference itself, but then also the whole experience, like what to pack, what not to pack, what you need for, like, you better bring layers and you can't rely on your chargers because there's like one outlet in the whole conference center. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble, because we've lived it. Amber and I went to our first Wedding MBA in like 2016. When did we meet? 2016. So
that was my first one.
We were attendees before we were ever speakers, obviously. And like, we just kind of know the lay of the land, and it's helpful.
No, I would have been 2014. That was when Florida's born. It was 2014.
2014. Wow.
10 years.
10 years, baby.
Ah.
10 years. So yeah, it's not just about the education, but it is about the entire experience.
Yeah.
Of we even like, we're like, hey, these restaurants are good restaurants. Like, we're going to give you everything.
It's like the empowerment that comes from having that cohort or that group of people, which is really important.
Yeah, and I wish I had had that my first year, right? I mean, even though I kind of knew Vegas before I went, I didn't know. I was eating like a random gross veggie burger in the downstairs food court. Like, I didn't know what to do.
Regardless, whatever industry you're in, try to find a way to make that conference or that city feel smaller. And that just starts with connecting with people in advance.
Yeah. This has been such a good conversation. I feel like very encouraged to actually knock off some things on my to-do list today that I feel like I've been putting off. But to kind of wrap up, what are some top like tips or just like key takeaways that you would want to leave listeners with if they're debating about going to a conference or just like encouraging them, just like 3 key things that you want to leave people with?
My extrovert self wants to say, don't be afraid to cross the room and talk to people. Right. I mean, even if you're like shy about it, right? Just like, no one's going to be rude. I can't imagine anyone, any speaker anyway, would be like, don't talk to me. Like, we love it. We're like, don't talk to me when I'm in the bathroom. But other than that, you can talk to me. I would say cross the room. I would say, even if you have like a focused thing, right? Like, even when I was at Alt Summit and I was like, I'm only going to book things, I still went to other like parties or, I tried to like branch out a slight bit from my narrow focus. I think that's okay to like the socialization piece is a little wider. And just take care of your body, take care of yourself, take care of your brain. Conference weeks can be a lot, and you don't want to end up so depleted that you can't do your implementation day at the end. You want to make sure that you're supporting yourself.
Yeah. I think the things I would throw out there is just really making sure that you plan your time and block it when you get home so you do your work. I think taking proper notes is important. I think what we tend to do is like just regurgitate what was said as opposed to putting any kind of order to our notes as we're taking them. Like, have columns, action items for today, action items for next quarter, highlight things, use symbols so you have shorthand and you can refer to it later. And there's so many different ways to break up your notes where it's not just like everything they said. And then I think also for the introverts out there, wear a statement piece, do something kind of funky with your outfit, carry a fun bag, something that's going to get someone else to come up to you to start a conversation and say, oh, that's such a cool necklace. Where'd you get that? Or, and an easy starter right there. You didn't have to do anything.
And for God's sakes, wear your name tags so that everyone knows your name. Do not,
Yes.
No one's too cool for a name tag. I promise you. Marcy Blum wears a name tag. Wear the name tag.
I love it. Those are great tips. Well, Renee, Amber, thank you so much. This was such an empowering conversation. I know a lot of people who are going to their next conference will feel much more confident after listening to this episode. Lastly, I guess, how can people find you and work with you before they go to their next conference?
So you can find us on Instagram at Conference Confident, and in the link in bio is the link to this year's cohort, which is at Wedding MBA 2024.
So we're going to offer a discount for your listeners, and using the code CC50, you all can get $50 off a ticket to Conference Confident if you would like to attend, if you're in the wedding industry and want to attend that Wedding MBA. And you need to purchase that though by October 10th. That's our cutoff to be able to get everything done, because again, we do prep work going into it. We want to make sure that you're within that group. So that's CC50.
And you also get a room block discount at our host hotel, which is Park MGM, which is our favorite because it's smoke free and small, and we love it there.
Taking care of everybody, smoke free.
Yes.
Oh, do you want us to say where you can find us individually? I just said conference.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that would be great.
Individually, you can find me at Renee Dalo on Instagram, and then my website is also Renee Dalo.
You can find me at Refine for Wedding Planners on Instagram.
Amazing.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. Yeah, this was great.
Thanks for having us. It's fun to do this together.
Yes, thank you.